Welcome to our first Community Initiative webinar. I'm Mina Kim, Program Officer for the Community Initiative at the Mass Cultural Council. Thank you for taking the time to be here today. We know this is a tough moment for everyone in various ways, and we just want you to know that we're thinking of you and we're here to support you in whatever capacity you need us. So I'm going to share my screen. So today among the attendees and guests that we have folks from local cultural councils, cultural districts, and festival organizers, which are the three programs that comprise the Community Initiative. And the entire team is here today. So we have our fearless leader, Lisa Simmons, who is the program manager. We have Luis Cotto, who is the Cultural District's program manager. And then we have the amazing program officers. Timothy Pham is here, Ricardo Guillaume, and Veronica Ramirez Martel. And so, you know, I'm not sure if everyone's seen this map before, but we are assigned different regions across the state, and each of us has been holding different office hours to check in with local cultural councils. Luis has been holding check-ins with cultural districts, and Lisa and Timothy have been doing some work with festivals. And so know that, you know, we want to be here for you, and we know there are a lot of questions during this uncertain time. And so if you can make the office hours, they're posted on our agency dates, which we'll show you in a moment after the presentations. But also, you know, we're always here just a phone call away or an email away. So feel free to contact us with any questions, or if you just want to chat. So we do have, actually, let's first go over some of the tech logistics. So if you are unmuted and not speaking, please mute yourself so that we can avoid having reverb and background noise. Questions, please type them in the Q&A box, and our team members will answer them. We are going to allow for 1 or 2 questions after each speaker, but we want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A at the end. So we'll just save the majority of questions then. And then notes and relevant links will be sent out, including a link of a recording of this webinar. And so rest assured, you don't have to absorb everything right now. We will follow up with everyone with notes, links, resources, and other things that we think of throughout the webinar. And we have a full roster here. So Kelly Bennett is from our artist department. She's going to go over the relief grants for individuals. And then we're going to hear from Brian Foote, who is the Executive Director of the Northampton Arts Council, who's going to share with us some things that he's seeing happening within the City of Northampton. And then we have Emily Ruddock, Executive Director of MASSCreative, and she's going to provide us with more information on what's happening at the state level in the legislature with advocacy updates. And then we have more local perspectives with Margo Saulnier, who's the Arts and Culture Strategist for the City of New Bedford, and Jess Bregoli, who is co-chair of the New Bedford Cultural Council. And then we have Norman Ng, who is Public Affairs Specialist from the Massachusetts District Office of the U.S. Small Business Administration. And he has a lot of really important information to share around how to access some of the aid for small businesses. And then we'll have time for Q&A. All right.
So I just wanted to briefly go through 3 tangible things that would be of use to individual artists. But to give quick background, from March 16th through March 22nd, we conducted a brief survey in under 1 week. Essentially, it showed for 595 individuals, 2.89 million was lost in revenue, just to give a little perspective. And for 556 organizations answered that survey just on March 16th through 22nd, and 55.7 million was lost. So out of that brief snapshot, we produced for individuals a grant program in which the deadline is April 22nd. And I'm going to just show you the program briefly.
You might have to click on the share screen button again, Kelly.
Yeah. Let me give it a go. Okay. Okay. On the Mass Cultural Council website under Artist and Art, there'll be an application process for individuals. Very briefly, it's $1,000 grants. There are going to be 225 of them for individuals who lost income through their creative practices and have been adversely affected. It's open to Massachusetts residents, independent teaching artists, humanists, and scientists. The deadline is April 22nd. Okay, there's $225,000, 47,000 of which came from New England Foundation for the Arts. The grants are going to be awarded on a geographical basis by lottery. The selection will be random and the grants will be unrestricted. It's very simple application. The artists essentially have to fill out their name and address. Very brief questions. Are they a resident? Did they lose income more than a quarter from their taxable income? Can they demonstrate a loss of that income? If they can, they describe what happened to their work, how much they lost in revenue, the number of performances, exhibitions, or gigs, and so forth. That's it. It's a very stripped down application. We're looking at providing the grants shortly thereafter, about a week later. The artists will be notified. We want to get this money out the door fast. So artists will be notified April 27th. May 4th, the contracts will be sent out. That is the easiest way to get a little bit of cash to some artists right now through the Mass Cultural Council program. We also have something on ArtSake that is constantly updated. ArtSake is our blog, and on the right-hand side of ArtSake is a category called COVID-19. And I would point you to two resources on ArtSake. One is the roundup, weekly roundup. Those are the most recent opportunities that come across our transom that we publish. This is the grant I was just referring to. But then in addition to the roundups, we'll have two resources. One is funding, and one is for actual resources for help. Those are tangible. I would really recommend that you get the word out for those as well. And if you find that there are opportunities you want me to post, contact me and I will add them to our list as well. I would say, finally, we have Hire Culture, which is an employment site. So if an artist is looking for employment, they should look here in Hire Culture. And I think that's it for now. So this page will show you that survey. If you need, you can download it as a PDF, which will give you the information that I was briefly describing before around the losses that we've seen just in that very brief beginning period of March 16 through 22. That's what I have.
And
Okay.
Kelly, the deadline is April 22nd, right?
It is, correct. Okay. And we're at the 15th now, so it's right around the corner. The artists don't have to provide, as part of the application, tax documentation. They attest to the fact that they earned, in their most recent filing, a quarter of their income or more was derived through their artistic work or practice. Okay.
Great. We have one question from Diane McGarry. Okay. If my income, she asks, if my income isn't in the past, but anticipated for the rest of the year, can I still apply?
You can, yes, if you can demonstrate that you had, for instance, 7 gigs upcoming in June, July, and August, and they've all been canceled, or that you were hired to teach a painting class or so forth, and you can demonstrate that that was in the works, then that's going to be lost income. So you should apply.
Great. Thank you, Kelly, so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So next, we're going to hear from Brian.
Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's taking care in this really tough time. I have the fortunate, I have a really strong supportive board, and we have a subcommittee, and we also do a lot of fundraising through event-based fundraising throughout the year. So we're not looking forward to next year's fiscal issues with that. But our board usually does a spring grant round called the Arts Easy Grant Round. And that grant subcommittee got together at the beginning of the month, and we decided to distribute a survey to everybody who's ever been hired or applied for one of our grants or was awarded one of their grants. And our reaction of the things that we've been doing this past month has been a direct result of the responses from that survey. We got about 75 really strong responses. And our first action was to look at all our grant rounds from last year and grant an auto extension of 6 months. To a blanket auto extension to anybody who hasn't applied for reimbursement. We also allowed for, if somebody had something scheduled, to use a live stream public component as opposed to doing it at a public place and within Northampton, as long as there's a Northampton, Florence, or Leeds audience. We also decided, as the board decided, that if the artist was having difficulty and didn't have other sources of income, they could convert the grants that we give out to COVID-19 relief. So that was our first, we took our grants from last year and we did that. And the #1 response we got from most of the survey from people, what the artists needed is they need relief. They need money because of lost opportunities. So we decided to take the money that we usually allocate for our Arts Easy grants in 2020 and convert it to a COVID-19 relief fund, in which we'll be offering money for COVID-19 relief during this year. So we're going to open that in the next 24 hours. And alongside the same campaign, we'll be having an application. And we definitely looked at the MCC's individual artists, and we adopted some of that, but we were working on it before, and it's very open. And the questions are a little bit more specific to our area. And we're open to arts organizations as well, because there's a lot of arts organizations that are on a really shoestring budget here. So our idea is to provide $10,000 in immediate relief, and then we're doing a Gofundme campaign at the same time. So when we go to press, we'll be running a Gofundme campaign, and the application will open, and the deadline for both of them will be the same day. And how we're doing it is similar, is that whatever we raise and have in the pot, we're just gonna cut it up and equally and distribute it to all the people that are eligible, that fit within our guidelines for eligibility. So that's the response we've had in Northampton, and that was, formulated from my board's grant subcommittee, passed by my board and myself. And we've also been taking resources from the MCC's website and other Americans for the Arts and other resource things, and creating a COVID resource page for artists, communicating with the local paper and our email list as well. And another side project that I helped on the side was we administered a fundraising campaign to get surgical masks to local hospital workers. And we raised about $5,400 on a Facebook campaign, and we're donating about 10,000 protective surgical masks to the local trauma unit at Bay State Hospital. So those are some things that, we've been doing in Northampton. We're looking forward to hopefully August is a time when we can all get back together, but we're planning most of our public events to have an idea to be able to live stream them at the same time. So either way, we're going to either try to do the best we can to keep our community together, whether it's going to be on a live stream on Twitch or something, or, you know, hopefully it's in person. So that's what we've been doing in Northampton, and hopefully everybody's been taking care and staying positive.
Thank you so much for sharing, Brian. All right, Emily, how's everything looking?
Brian, if I may, just really quickly, hearing how you as an arts council have so quickly converted and pivoted dollars to meet need is exceptional, and I just want to give some snaps for that. That's actually one of the recommendations we're sort of encouraging both private foundation, private sources of money, and then public sources of money to do, is to try to, relax restrictions as much as possible in order to help meet needs. So thank you, Brian, for being a great model of that. Thanks for the opportunity to just chat, and I'll give you a quick update on what's happening on the state and federal level as I understand it right now. Things are changing all the time. So on the federal level, I think we all know about 3 weeks ago, the CARES Act was signed into law. It's the third in a series of COVID-related federal bills, stimulus bills. And this one was really focused around some economic need and, frankly, financial need. So Norm, I cannot wait, or Norman, I can't wait to hear what you're going to say about the SBA programs. What was really great to see was a couple of things related to that bill. So number one, for the first time, I believe in the history of unemployment, the unemployment safety net, independent contractors and individuals are included, were included in unemployment relief assistance. So that program is still coming online. If you go to the Massachusetts Department of Unemployment Assistance right now, it tells you that they're working on it. They're getting guidelines from the feds, and they are working on what that program is. But that's a huge deal, particularly for our sector, which I like to think of as one of the homes of the gig economy, or OG gig economy, right? So then the next piece is in that bill was the creation of the Paycheck Protection program, which you'll hear more about later on today. Or in this call, as well as the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Both of those programs are available to small businesses and independent contractors. So that's another important piece of this. Then the next piece that I just want to mention and flag is that money was allocated to the National Endowment for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Humanities, and the IMLS, which is the Institute for Museums and Library Services. All three are national agencies that have a portion of those dollars allocated to both state agencies as well as our regional arts agencies. So in our case, that would be NEFA, the New England Foundation for the Arts, and the Mass Cultural Council. So about 40% of that whole money from the NEA is going to go that way. The NEA was the first of those three agencies to release guidelines about how that money is going to be distributed and open up an application program. So that's also really interesting. Good for you, NEA. So the things that we know too is that the state so leadership in the state, so the governor and then Speaker DeLeo and Senate President Spilka, on the immediate sort of outbreak of COVID-19, worked really quickly to address the public health crisis, right? So one of the first things they did was pass a bill to allocate more dollars for our frontline health workers. And that's exactly what they should do, right? But then they went into a little bit of, not a hold period, because they're all still working up there very hard, but they're waiting to see what the feds were going to do and see how much money was going to be distributed to states and how much of a gap or a hole they were going to need to fill. So that piece of the equation was sort of answered with the CARES Act legislation. We also expect, knock wood, like literally everybody knock wood, that a fourth federal stimulus bill will show up in the next couple of weeks. There's some question about, you know, were members being a couple of, like last week it was members were being told you got to put in what your requests are for that bill, and then there was reports that the talks fell apart. So there's an intention there, and there's clearly a recognition that there needs to be more relief coming. It's just a question of how quickly that's going to come online, and that, frankly, let's all just take a beat, is really scary right in this moment. So the state watched what happened with the CARES Act. And then yesterday, the co-chairs of Ways and Means, which is Chair Michaelwitz from Boston and Chair Rodricks from Fall River and South Shore, held, along with Secretary Heffernan, who's the Secretary of Administration and Finance, held an economic roundtable hearing where representatives from some of our best nonpartisan think tanks around economics gave reports. And I think this is not going to come as any shock, but the reports are not good. There is already, they're seeing a reduction of revenue, of state revenues. They're seeing that the lottery is seeing a reduction in sales, right? Because a lot of the lottery sales are happening at point of purchase, and a lot of those point of purchases places are either closed or aren't seeing as much foot traffic. Unemployment is up. So those three factors are what they know. And then the other piece of information, and this is, again, unfortunately, I wish I was like, here's what's going to happen, here's the solution, is that there's some question as to how the economy will rebound, right? It has to do with COVID-19 and how our efforts at social distancing and self-quarantining allow there to be a flattening of the curve, and then how quickly can we reopen for business as a Commonwealth. I think probably some of you saw yesterday that Governor Baker also joined a coalition of governors on the eastern seaboard yesterday that are talking about how are they going to reopen their states and reopen their economies. I think that that's a really I'm really heartened by that, because what it means is our state is in conversations and thinking really holistically about how we're going to take care of people, and both their health and then their income and their livelihood. So all of that economic data yesterday, and I will include a couple of good articles if you're the kind of nerd who really wants to dig into those details like I am. I'll send those along to you, Mina, so you can send them out to the participants. But all of those details mean that the major activity of the legislature right now should be the formulation and passage of the state budget, right? And that's something that we've worked really closely with the Mass Cultural Council on every year, and with all of you as advocates. So right now, if we were in a normal year, we would see a draft version of the budget being released from House Ways and Means. The House would debate it. Then next month, we'd see a Senate version. The Senate would debate it. They'd come up with a reconciled version that they'd send to the governor. And we'd either get to thank the governor for signing the budget into law, or ask the legislature to override a veto if he were to veto the parts of the budget. That's not going to happen this year. Michaelwitz has already said that it's going to be a different budget year. We're going to see that budget come out slower. There are a couple of tools that the legislature has at their disposal in cases where there's not a clear economic picture. They could choose to do a 1/12 budget, which means that they would it would be like a month by month rollover, so that it would allow for continued operations, but it wouldn't be the sort of like large scale annual budget that we're used to. The governor could, the administration could also look to make some, to try to finish up this year's budget, right? And make sure that they can pay for this year's expenses, right? And so that's another piece of that. So one of the things that we are spending a lot of time on is making sure that you all are talking with your elected officials and telling them what the impact of COVID-19 has meant to your ability to earn a living, for your ability to gather people. I'm starting to say this, you can all give me your feedback. We are the gathering economy. We bring people together. And while we're seeing some amazing examples of that moving online, what it means to not be able to do that, to bring people together physically, is having an impact. So we need to share with our lawmakers what that's doing. The other piece that I just want to also check in with you about, and then I promise I'll be quiet, is that in addition to thinking about sort of creative sector specific relief packages or funds that are going to go directly to our arts and cultural partners, we at MASSCreative are also trying to look a little more holistically. So here's a great example. Last week, the House and the Senate both passed versions of a bill that would put a moratorium on evictions for people if they aren't able to pay their rent, a moratorium on foreclosures if they're not able to pay their mortgages, and a moratorium on evictions if you're not able to pay your commercial lease, right? And this isn't just for the creative sector, this is for all of us. And so we at MASSCreative felt it was really important for us to lend our voice to the existing work that is happening in the housing advocacy community around those bills, and advocate for the House version of that bill, because that's the version that's going to make the biggest impact and really help people. So we're trying to figure out how we are continuing to think more holistically about the things that are not just going to affect us as individuals or small businesses and nonprofits in the creative sector, but across the Commonwealth, across sectors. So I think the last thing, and this is sort of a like next time on, is another piece of that, and this is going to go back to that federal piece. Another piece of that CARES Act was an inclusion of dollars for the community development block grants. Now, the community development block grants are a program that are run through HUD, which is the Housing and Urban Development Agency. It's a federal agency. And those dollars go to the state, and then they also go to municipalities. So in my very non-scientific way, it would be really helpful for me to know if any participants on this call, and I think you could probably use the chat box, have received funds through a community block grant program in your municipality. That's a tough word for me, I'm sorry. Because that's another place where we're trying to figure out how we can help connect organizations and individuals and municipal-led efforts to these community development block grants. So if that's you, let me know. I'd love to talk more with you about that. Thanks for the time, Mina and team.
Thank you so much, Emily. Yeah, as Emily mentioned, there's so many things that are changing in the moment every hour, it seems. And so we'll definitely, keep everyone updated as, regularly as we can. And I do want to mention that tomorrow, Emily is going to be speaking with Anita Walker during our agency's culture chats. And so we'll definitely include the link to the culture chat so you can, join and hear from cultural activists, advocates, programmers, really, folks in the field who are doing incredible work right now, so you can hear sort of what they're going through. And one other thing that I wanted to mention before we move on is, I know, especially with like the local cultural councils at this moment, we're trying to find strategies that are suited for different timeframes. And so right now we're helping with sort of the immediate needs when it comes to, figuring out how to support the grantees whose programs have been postponed or canceled or modified. And coming up in the next couple of months, we'll really be working with local cultural councils and our cultural partners to figure out, what the longer term response might be, especially as we enter the fiscal year 21 period. Because it's true, like we're not going to be continuing on as if nothing has changed, because so many things have changed. And we'll have to figure out ways to really support our cultural constituents around how to adapt and support the creative sector. So, all right. So next we have Margo Saulnier and Jess Bregoli from New Bedford.
Thank you, Mina, and hello everyone. My name is Margo Saulnier, and I'm the creative strategist for the City of New Bedford. And I'm joined by Jess Bregoli, who's the chair of the local Cultural Council, and she'll speak in a few minutes. So like all of you, New Bedford artists and cultural organizations were hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic. My primary function over the last 4 weeks has been to communicate the resources and funding opportunities available, which I do through email newsletter, New Bedford Creative, which you see here on the right, and the website newbedfordcreative.org, and our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. My colleagues at the New Bedford Economic Development Council have been updating small businesses, which include nonprofits, on the latest developments from the SBA and other resources through the CARES Act. So some of you who are on my eBlast list have also been receiving frequent communications from the EDC. All of our arts and culture organizations have had to quickly pivot, we've been using that word pivot a lot, to provide offerings virtually. And there are lots of projects being funded. The three main funding mechanisms for public arts and culture programs here in New Bedford include New Bedford Cultural Council, financed by Mass Cultural Council, Wicked Cool Places, which is financed by the city's Arts, Culture, and Tourism Fund with additional support from Mass Development and Mass Cultural Council, and the Creative Commonwealth Initiative, which is financed by the Community Foundation of Southeastern Massachusetts and the Barr Foundation. So Jess and I, we'd like to address how individuals and organizations are adapting to this new normal. Currently, I'm working with 13 grant recipients through Wicked Cool Places, most of which have altered their projects to go virtual and as well to sustain their organizations. And Jess Bregoli, who's the chair of New Bedford Local Cultural Council, is in quite a different situation as she is working with dozens more grant recipients, as you'll see. So Jess, can you unmute yourself now and tell us a little bit about what you've been doing?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jessica Bregoli. I don't think you can see me because I can't see me. But yeah, so pretty much what we've been doing is reaching out via Facebook and emails to all these people that you see listed here that got awarded Cultural Council funds this year. We've only heard back from about a handful of people still right now. I think everybody's still trying to figure out what they're going to do. Oh, cool, you can see me. So some people are going to go viral, which is we're fine with. Some people are looking to push it more into the fall and winter. And we've just been requesting that people send us an email or a letter stating how they're going to change their project or the date or location. So actually being on this conference today gave me some really good ideas for our next Zoom meeting with the rest of the Cultural Council on other ways that we can maybe allot the monies that are going to be completely canceled to like an artist relief fund. I think would be a really good idea, but you know, still figuring it out and working on it and just waiting to hear back from the grantees.
Thank you, Jess. So one of the projects that received Cultural Council funds as well as Wicked Cool Places is AHA. Some of you may have heard about AHA. It's stands for Art, History, and Architecture and is held downtown in our Seaport Cultural District every second Thursday night. And with over 60 partners, last week AHA debuted VAHA, Virtual AHA Night. And this past Monday, Lee Heald, who's the director of AHA, spoke with Anita Walker on one of Mass Cultural Council's Culture Chats. So here are two screenshots that I took. One is of a gallery owner and artist, Allison Wells, on Facebook Live, and she did a fun collage craft. And the other is from UMass Dartmouth College of Visual and Performing Arts, their MFA exhibition, curated by galleries director Vieira Levitt. So there were dozens of others that participated, most through Facebook Live, Zoom, or Instagram Live. And they were individual artists and musicians, as well as organizations. And the complete list is on AHA's website there. And it's I should note that the next two AHAs will be VAHA, so both May and June will be VAHA, virtual AHA night. And what I love about AHA's website is that their VAHA page has this great 24/7 connect from your couch. So it has a list of many of the arts and culture offerings that you can connect to anytime, at any time of the day, any date, not just on the second Thursdays. And so I'd like to review just quickly a few other virtual offerings that the city is doing. One is the New Bedford Symphony Orchestra has a series of live streaming concerts, which you can access on their website or Facebook Live. They're also recorded, so you can view them at any time. And then in education and community, Terry Walkowitz, who's the education director, has created a whole series of music education videos. And she was the first culture chat with Anita Walker for Mass Cultural Council, so you can check that out. The New Bedford Whaling Museum created a museum from home page, which you can explore their collection from, and they have different categories. So it's listed for parents, art lovers, teachers and students, history and herstory, and bookworms. And they are also planning a virtual Moby Dick Marathon, which is one of their most popular events each year. So go and check that out. The Zeiterion Performing Arts Center has launched a virtual creative classroom, and that they have a whole list of all ages of different classes that you can take, and they have a pay what you can model. And we have a ton more. So like I mentioned previously, with over 60 arts and culture partners downtown and many more throughout the city, I have links to most all of them on our New Bedford Creative website in the cultural district section. So what you're seeing here is our feature for the Seaport Cultural District. And I'd like to give a shout out to all of the individual artists who live and work here in New Bedford. A few highlights. So here you're seeing muralists Ryan McPhee and Jeff St. Pierre. They created a beautiful new mural downtown near Custom House Square. They will be replacing the coronavirus with flowers once we are on the other side of the pandemic. We have independent filmmaker Ethan Diaguiar releasing his short film To New Bedford with Love, which documents all of the gathering places and small businesses that are closed, but it also has a really inspiring call to action for all of us to be creative. And then we have some projects that are in the works now. This is artist Midori Evans of Midori Creativity, who is raising money for food pantries with digital quarantine collages, hashtag time stood still. And we have textile artist Rhonda M. Fazio, who's creating an exhibit called the Mayday Mask Makers in the Time of COVID, which will be displayed in her downtown gallery Interwoven Traditions and debuted on May's Baja Night. And this actually is not just limited to New Bedford. If anyone's listening, if you've made 1 mask or 100 masks and you want to be part of the exhibition, you can contact Rhonda on Facebook. And then finally, we have Hatch Street Studios artist Rick Gormley, and he is releasing his New Bedford Bringers of the Light to thank all essential workers. So this, we haven't announced this campaign, it's being announced right now. This will be launched next week to encourage everyone to print out this image or create their own candle to display in their windows. And it harkens back to the city's whaling days, bringing the light to the world. And this is our way of putting a spotlight and honoring the frontline essential workers. So I want to thank Mina and Mass Cultural Council for letting us share how the New Bedford arts and culture community is responding to COVID-19. Thank you, Mina.
Thank you so much, Margo and Jess, for sharing what's happening in New Bedford. It seems like there's a lot of great energy and a lot of great initiatives that are making sure we're supporting each other during this time. I do want to ask, How has it been working with different city offices during this time, especially with regard to grant modification related reimbursements?
Can you, I had a hard time hearing you. Can you repeat that?
Oh, sure. I'm just wondering, like right now, I feel like city departments are at different levels of operating capacity due to the situation. And I was just wondering if you could share what it's been like being in communication with different city departments.
So for me, I mainly have been working in partnership with the tourism department. That's where we get our funding goes through the tourism department. And the mayor's office, the main person who has been he's actually meeting with the mayor today, is the executive director of the EDC, Derek Santos. So, as you can imagine, most of what the city is dealing with is the health and safety of the residents. So, in my opinion, it actually works out quite well that I'm at the EDC for arts and culture, and I'm able to move forward with all of the grants and getting the word out to artists with funding opportunities, and creating new campaigns and expanding calls for art, etc. So so the city's concentrating where they should be right now, and on our end, we're bringing like hope and inspiration to the city. So it's just really a privilege and honor to be working with so many artists and cultural organizations right now who are all devastated by this pandemic. But there is a sense of togetherness, even though we're all on Zoom, and we are all supporting one another.
Great, thank you.
On our end, Rob, that works for the city, where we send him all of our reimbursement requests and stuff, he's doing a great job doing it all digitally. I don't need to go into the office, and he's right on top of it. So he's doing great. I haven't heard any complaints from anybody about not getting their checks after sending in their reimbursement forms to us. So on our end, everything's been working smoothly.
Same here, we're getting our funding immediately.
That's good to hear. Thank you both for sharing. We do have a couple of questions. Someone is asking.
If I can pop in for a second, thank y'all for sharing, and Margo, thank you for not sharing your screen anymore. If you could turn off sharing.
Okay.
Oh, I can also end it for you. There was a question. There were two questions actually. So one is, for the virtual programming, is it all free or is any of it paid? I believe they mean whether, attending the virtual program is free, or if people are taking donations, or if there's a fee to attend. Margo or Jess, if you know anything about that.
From what I've seen, everything is free. I don't know what type of platforms that they're using, if they're using a paid platform to do their virtual tours and performances, etc. But every link that I've clicked on to watch something has been free. So
great. And then another question from Wendy Bornstein. Is there a way to promote artists doing virtual performances for nursing homes, etc., and have them pay the usual fee? And so, Wendy, if I'm understanding the question correctly, you're asking if there's a way to promote artists who have converted their programs into a virtual medium and continue paying them the funding that was allotted to them. And if that is what you meant by the question, yes. So grantees have to submit a grant modification form to the local cultural council. And once the cultural council approves the modification, you should be able to carry out the programs through a virtual format. All right, so we're going to move on. So Norman Ng from the Small Business Administration, we are ready for you.
Solidarity with all of you. This is a really difficult time for all of us. Today, what I want to go through is just a quick overview of the programs available to self-employed. You could be an artist, you could be a construction person, you could be a small business owner, you could sell arts and crafts on Etsy. But as I think it was Emily had mentioned, with the CARES Act, there was a disaster declared. And so with that disaster declaration, a couple of economic recovery programs, yes, thank you, were approved for use by the public. Yeah, if you can go next slide. Okay, great. March 27th, the CARES Act was enacted, and it activated a program called the PPP, Paycheck Protection Program. But before that, March 18th, there was a statewide that activated the EIDL, and I'm going to go through that. Next slide, please. Now, the SBA's normal programs are listed here. We're all about educating people through our resource partners, which include SCORE, Massachusetts Small Business Development Centers, and Center for Women in Enterprise. Some of you may have taken a class, for example, at CWE or SCORE in Boston. We also have loan programs, including microloans, government guarantee programs. We have government contracting opportunities. So if you have something to sell, a product or a service to a federal government agency, we also certify you and help you sell your products and services to the government. And the last program on the spectrum is what we're going to talk about here. Next, please. Okay, so the disaster programs consist of PPP, EIDL, and we have something for existing SBA loan program recipients called the Small Business Debt Relief Program. Next slide. So the Paycheck Protection Program, you should start, if you have payroll, W-2s, if you're paying people by W-2s, the spirit of the Paycheck Protection Program allows you to bring your staff back and keep your business running for an 8-week period. The loan program is fully forgiven if you abide by the eligibility criteria. Okay, and those that are eligible can be a nonprofit as well as a for-profit. And we just received guidance actually yesterday for sole proprietors and independent contractors. So I'm sure a lot of you are waiting to hear information about that. Loan size is calculated by your 12-month average multiplied by 2.5, okay? Excluding any payroll over 100K. That's a very complicated formula if you're listening to it for the first time, but there is guidance out there. This thing does not want to stop thinking, Nina. But so everybody's loan size is calculated differently. So if you're a sole proprietor, actually, you're going to use on your Schedule C. If you have a 1099 Schedule C, there's a line 31 where there's net profit. Now, if you have a Schedule C with net profit 0 as a self-employed individual, then you're not eligible. You have to have a Schedule C to prove or some sort of documentation. And the use of the funds are supposed to cover wages, okay, 75% of it. Now, 25% of it can be used for utilities, rent, lease, and other expenses for working capital. Next slide. So where do I get the PPP? You go to your bank first that you're currently doing business with. Right now, there's a lot of restrictions going on at the banks. Some of the banks are only accepting customers that have a current checking account or done a loan with the business owner. And so if you're experiencing that situation, what you need to do is look for a different lender, a participating PPP lender. And so on our website, www.sba.gov/MA, Massachusetts District Office, all our resources that I'm talking about is located there. We have a list of new PPP participating lenders that came on board. You can also use online fintech lenders like PayPal, Cabbage, and Divvy. Fundera, also heard Square is a good one. And so there's all these online lenders that are being approved to do this also. And next slide. So you have until June 30th. The program ends June 30th. Okay, but what you need to know is when the CARES Act was signed, there was $350 billion assigned to this. And so as of today, we're probably at about 300 billion. So there's, by the end of the week, I can almost guarantee you that this pot will be dried up, and we will have to wait for an act of Congress for the PPP program to be refunded. And so there's talks of another 250 billion being refueled for this program. So the thing is, you should go right away in line and apply. It's pretty likely, hopefully, that it'll get refunded, but we just don't know when. Now let's talk about the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. The PPP program is done through your bank or a lending institution online. The EIDL is done through the SBA, and you need to go to sba.gov/disaster. But this is just a quick timeline of how it went down. This is one of our regular disaster programs. Whenever there was like a Hurricane Katrina or Boston bombing incident, 9/11, we activate this program. It's a low interest loan program. And next slide, please, Mina. And here are what you can get out of this. So right now, it's up to 2 million. It went, so there was some back and forth with this.
Nelson.
Earlier this week, they had limited it to 15K because there were so many people applying. But now it's back to the normal 2 million. The length of the loan is 30 years. And if you're a nonprofit, it's 2.5%, 3.75% for businesses. Now, one of the added kickers of this program that's new from CARES Act is you're eligible to apply for up to 10K in a forgivable grant. Now, you can get the full 10K if you have 10 employees. What they did was they limited the grant amount to $1,000 per employee. If you're a solopreneur, self-employed, sole prop, you can get 1K. Now, because of the popularity and just so many people applying, it's up to 10K. And next slide, please. And so the way you apply is through sba.gov/MA, the disaster. Actually, the web address is covid19relief.sba.gov. On our website, sba.gov/MA, there's a list of the forms that you need in order to apply. But really, it's a quick application process. They kind of just ask you at some point, how much gross revenue and what's your cost of goods sold. There's a lot of ways for you to do this. calculation. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos, to be honest. There's one guy, JJ the CPA, who's posting a lot of great informational videos on how to apply. I would ask you to, look into your own situation and consult a CPA or an advisor. Next slide, please. If any of you out there have an existing SBA loan or want to take out a regular loan, there is an opportunity to have, for the next 6 months, your interest and principal paid for, actually, by the SBA. So doesn't matter what the amount is either. You have until September 27th to apply for that. Next slide. So anybody that needs assistance or wants to have one-on-one counseling, we have partners for you to apply, schedule a virtual session. It's done through SCORE at the top there. You see SCORE, Small Business Development Centers, Center for Women and Enterprise. They are all grantees of the SBA. They receive a grant, and they do virtual sessions, educational workshops that are all free right now. So stay in touch with our partners and learn while you're at home. And then Boston SCORE is doing some scheduling of one-on-one sessions. If you have any follow-ups to this loan program or anything that I speak about, you can follow up directly with boston.score.org and schedule a meeting. There's a way to select a time in their calendar and schedule a time to meet with a counselor. I'm also available too, but I'm really swamped right now, and I'm being asked to do a lot of things, but I'm happy to help anybody on this call. Next slide. Yeah, so SCORE is throughout the state. I know that many of you are different parts of the state here, so there's a web address here for each chapter and each part of the Commonwealth. And again, the SCORE is all volunteer run, and many of them are retired executives, and they're happy to help in any way. Really, right now, you could reach out to any chapter. They're all doing counseling virtually. Next slide. Small Business Development Center is also another resource. If you go to msbdc.org/RFC, you could request counseling. They're doing intake through a form there. You could choose each region as well. Next slide. Center for Women Enterprise is another Women Business Center resource. Anybody, any women that want to just talk to another woman. The way they're doing it is email them. They have an office in Boston as well as Central Massachusetts. They also received the grant for our Veterans Business Outreach Center, VBOC. So if there's any veterans out there, be sure to reach out to VBOC, which is run by Marco. My friend Marco is the director over there. Next slide. Okay, so here's my contact here. I'm also on LinkedIn. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to our newsletter there to get the latest updates. I send all the communications out from my office. And follow us on Twitter, though. Most of the updates are through Twitter and through our mailing process. Next. All right. Happy to answer any questions. My screen is still frozen for some reason. I don't want to touch anything or something will happen.
So we do have a couple of questions. Thank you so much, Norman, again, for taking the time to be here with us. All right, Luis, I know you had a question. Do you want to verbally ask?
Yeah, I think it might have been answered, and it was with regards to EIDL. EIDL has existed in the past, and in a previous talk I heard, there was that percentage, right, that interest rate for those, and then they were saying that the new EIDL from the CARES Act will have the forgivable portion there. And I guess the question is there a way for someone to say, I want to apply for the one that has the opportunity to be forgiven, or what, or is that
Yes.
okay? You have to ask specifically for that, or those two buckets
Yes.
still exist?
Yes, so for the EIDL, the online application process is a really smooth process, 5 steps. And in step 4, basically what it's going to ask you is, would you like to be considered for the 10K grant? And all it is a checkbox. And once you submit your application, you will get a loan number generated, and you will be considered for that grant, forgivable part, up to 10K, 1K per person, employee. And so what happens after you submit, right now it's taking 2 to 3 weeks roughly for SBA to get back to you and say, hey, we received your application. Once they get back to you, if you're eligible, 1K, let's say you're a solopreneur, 1K gets dropped in your bank account. Boom. That's how I've been seeing it. And then a couple days later, they will send you an email and say, hey, here's the loan amount. It's 15K. Do you want it? And then you decide to take it or not. You don't have to take it. And if you turn down the loan, you can still keep the forgivable 1K or up to 10K. So that's how the forgivable part works with the EIDL. Now with the PPP done through the bank, you will have to first go to your lender and do the calculation of how much loan amount you can get based on your payroll. And then what happens is you have to show some documentation, like payroll records, like from ADP or like paychecks, your paycheck provider, or tax forms and whatnot. And then so you get a loan amount, and then let's say the bank approves you, you move forward, and a couple months down the line, you have to apply for forgiveness. When you apply for forgiveness, you just have to show the lender how you use the funds from the start when your loan originates for the next 8 weeks. And show that through pay stubs and other records and stuff. As long as it's more than 75% going towards your payroll costs, then the loan is forgiven. Does that answer your question, Luis?
Yes, thank you very much.
We also have another question. So can the PPP be used by a sole proprietor or independent contractor with no employees? In other words, can an artist apply and pay her own wages?
Yes. So guidance just came out yesterday on our website, sba.gov. I think the fastest way to find it is sba.gov/MA. Under business resources and news, I put a link there. And so as long as you have a Schedule C on your tax return and you can prove profit and losses. So line 31 on your Schedule C, where you have net profit, that is the amount divided by 12 times 2.5, and that's the loan amount you can get.
Okay, great. And for those who are asking about follow-up links, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar, and we'll also make sure to include all the links that Norman just referred to. All right, thank you again. So it was really great hearing from a bunch of different folks about, some of the resources that they have available to the field, as well as some of the ideas and actions that people have taken. So thank you to all of our guest speakers. And before we leave, I just wanted to share a list of some resources that we have here at the Mass Cultural Council, excuse me, as well as some other arts and culture organizations. So at the Mass Cultural Council, we do have a page, and we'll send you all the links in the follow-up, but we have a list of comprehensive resources for the arts and culture sector. The artist department, as Kelly mentioned before, they have a great blog called ArtStake, where they provide a roundup of different fellowships and grant funds available to artists during this time. Lisa, actually, if you'd like to speak briefly about the gaming mitigation funds, that would be great. The deadline is coming up this Friday at 11:59 p.m.
Sure. So I did speak to CIP, which is the Cultural Investment Portfolio, who is the ones who are putting forward the gaming mitigation funds. I do believe it is actually now going to be extended. So that's a great thing. So one of the things that we were talking to them about, which I think is important for our community partners to understand, is that the gaming mitigation fund was basically focused on performing arts centers, and that's what it says in the guidelines. But you know, there's been a little bit of a change to that, and I think that everyone should be aware of that it's not necessarily performing arts venues. It's actually performing arts organizations or venues that can apply for this money. So let's say it's the Lowell Folk Festival. You have a big, you know, music festival that you bring in touring partners from around the country to be a part of that festival or something. You may be eligible for this grant award. And you know, it's not small money. It's actually a good chunk of money. It's not based on COVID. It is really based on organizations or venues that may have suffered from casinos being in certain areas and maybe taking those performers away from the things that they were doing. So you definitely need to, it would be great. I'm going to see, so Mina, can I just see if you take your screen off? I'm going to see if I can put up where to find it. So all of the information for that is on the Mass Cultural Council website. And you should be able, you know, if you just go and it's right here. Let me see if I can show you the URL, or we can get you the URL. We'll put it in chat, but it gives you all of the information that you need to know. And I just want to, you know, point out again, in the guidelines, it says here, applicants must be a performing arts center. This language has changed. Okay, so it's a performing arts organization or a venue. And I would just encourage you to connect with the program, and all the information is here. And the deadline was on Friday. I believe that deadline will be getting extended. So I just encourage you to tell folks in your community who might be able to apply for this funding.
Great, thank you, Lisa. I'm just going to go back to screen of resources. So yeah, so as mentioned, we'll send everyone all the URLs for everything that's been mentioned here today. We also have information on the relief fund for individuals that Kelly spoke of. Again, the deadline is April 22nd. We also have an FAQ page dedicated to LCCs and LCC grantees. And so in that FAQ, there's a lot of information about how to work with your municipalities when it comes to reimbursements or direct granting. There's also a lot of answers around and guidance around how to you know, communicate to grantees, to work with them, to see how you can best support them. We also have agency dates. So right now, I feel like, you know, everyone has different webinar programs and different types of workshops that are ongoing. And so we'll make sure to include all the links so you can join the culture chats, so that you can access some of the workshops that our cultural investment portfolio team has been talking about through their Safe Harbors program. And we'll also have, you know, webinars that we conduct through the community initiative on that page as well. We also have a YouTube page. So the agency has a YouTube page where we have all of these webinar recordings available. And then we also have a community initiative Facebook page. And so, you know, Emily mentioned earlier about the importance of communicating our stories to legislators and really communicating our stories to each other and also the public. And so we will be curating stories to promote through our Facebook page. And then we're also, you know, trying to seek stories that talk about how the arts community is adapting and responding to their cultural landscape during this time. And so we're always looking to hear what you're doing, what you've been seeing. And so please, if you have stories to share, just contact us and we'll make sure to you know, promote them in some way. There's also MASSCreative. They have an extensive COVID-19 page full of different policy updates, advocacy resources, and information on, you know, the eviction moratorium, as well as policy recommendations and information for small businesses. And then some of our other, you know, arts partners. So there's NEFA. There's also information on Americans for the Arts, the National Endowment for the Arts, and also the U.S. Small Business Administration. And so with that, we're going to see if there are any questions. I did see a question from Billy Joe Joy about unemployment. So some businesses are electing, oh, sorry. So there was a question about unemployment relief, which I believe, Emily, you wanted to respond to.
Yeah, thanks, Mina. And yeah, I think Billy Joe, if maybe you could use the chat box to clarify. So, so Norman gave a great answer about some businesses are electing to wait and keep people on unemployment, and those people will make more in some cases because in the CARES Act, there was a provision to add an additional $600 to unemployment assistance claims. But Billy Joel, if there's something more specific that you're looking for, we can try and answer it now. Okay. The question is, and Norman, I think you're going to have to answer this one. So if you are a sole proprietor who applies for the PPP, can you also apply simultaneously for unemployment relief? And I know the answer to that.
I don't believe so. But you have to talk to an expert there. I mean, technically you probably could, but then yeah, I don't know what happens.
Is this an instance?
Question. Let me look that up and I'll email it back out or something.
Thanks, Norm. Is this also an instance where someone could get in touch with the local SCORE office? Would this be something
please.
Okay, great. So we'll make sure to share all the links to the local offices.
There's an email, actually. They want you to email COVID-19@scoreboston.org, actually. This is exactly the reason. I put it in the chat box. COVID-19@scoreboston.org. I'm also going to try and find my own answer because I'm unclear also. But yes, thanks.
Great. Louise, did you want to say something? Oh, okay.
No, I was going to say the same thing about SCORE. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to our guest speakers for being so patient with all of the tech stuff and also, you know, contributing and sharing what's happening in your spaces within arts and culture. And we will be holding these community check-ins bi-weekly. We're still figuring out the timing and scheduling, so we'll make sure to send that out to folks once we determine the time and date. Thank you, everyone.